Hello and welcome to RadioCSIRT, your daily appointment with cybersecurity news. I am Marc Frederic Gomez, your French voice in the cybersecurity landscape. I hope you are doing well. It is Saturday, January 10th, 2026, episode 66, broadcasting live from France. On today's program, an overview of the current threat landscape in a context of high and persistent cyber pressure, marked by the convergence of critical technical vulnerabilities, structural dependencies on suppliers, and growing geopolitical tensions, followed by an analysis of the financial sector facing the dual threat of compromised providers and geopolitically driven cyber attacks. Financial sector, the dual threat of compromised suppliers and geopolitical cyber attacks. Executive summary: the financial sector is experiencing an unprecedented period of cyber threat. Data from 2025 reveals that 97% of major US banks and 100% of major European financial groups have suffered at least one security breach via a third-party supplier. This systemic vulnerability is accompanied by an intensification of geopolitical attacks, illustrated by the offensive by pro-Russian hacktivist group No Name 05716 against La Poste and La Banque Postale in December 2025. Concurrently, North Korean APT groups like Lazarus continue to target international banking infrastructures to finance the Pyongyang regime. Point. Projections for 2026 anticipate increased attack sophistication via artificial intelligence, expansion of indirect ransomware transiting through trusted partners, and continued professionalization of financial cybercrime. DORA regulatory compliance, while necessary, does not constitute sufficient protection against determined adversaries exploiting weak links in the digital ecosystem. The financial sector under permanent pressure. The World Economic Forum now classifies cyber attacks among the major risks weighing on global financial stability. This assessment does not stem from anxiety-driven forecasting, but from empirical observation. Financial institutions simultaneously manage critical monetary flows and massive volumes of sensitive data, a configuration that makes them privileged targets for actors with diverse motivations. The year 2025 confirmed this trend with remarkable intensity. Kaspersky data indicates that 12.8% of B2B financial companies suffered a ransomware attack over 12 months. Even more significant, detection systems blocked 1.33 million attacks by banking Trojans during the same period. These figures illustrate sustained criminal activity, but mask a more concerning strategic evolution: the shift of attack vectors toward third-party suppliers. The domino effect of supply chain attacks. The infiltration strategy through suppliers rests on implacable logic. Rather than directly confronting a major bank's multi-layered defenses, attackers target its technology service providers, software partners, or managed service providers. This oblique approach exploits a structural reality: the modern financial sector's hyperdependency on a complex digital ecosystem. Statistics reveal the systemic scale of the phenomenon. A security scorecard study covering 2024 shows that 97% of major US banks reported at least one breach involving a supplier. In Europe, this rate reaches 100% for major financial groups. These proportions, as counterintuitive as they may seem, are explained by a concentration factor. Only 6% of evaluated suppliers were actually compromised, but these strategic entities serve multiple institutions simultaneously. The SitusAMC attack in November 2025 concretely illustrates this cascading risk. This real estate services provider to banks, relatively discreet to the general public, suffered an intrusion on November 12th. Assailants exfiltrated confidential data belonging to several banking clients, accounting records, legal agreements, and customer information. The FBI, involved in the investigation, confirmed the absence of direct operational disruption to banking services. The incident was not destructive in nature, no ransomware encrypting systems, but involved massive exfiltration of sensitive data. This compromise raises a fundamental question for cybersecurity experts. Vital but less visible service providers receive significantly less scrutiny than the critical infrastructure institutions they serve. This asymmetry creates exploitable gaps for large-scale digital compromises. The phenomenon extends to fourth parties, meaning suppliers. The aforementioned study reveals that practically all surveyed banking establishments had also suffered incidents related to these indirect actors. Although only 2% of service providers originated these cascades, This risk concentration on a few critical nodes of the financial digital network raises fears of a coordinated attack scenario provoking generalized disruptions. So, indirect ransomware, new preferred tactic. The adaptation of ransomware groups to strengthen banking defenses deserves particular attention. Cyber insurers observe in 2025 a sharp increase in claims where ransomware penetrates the victim via a compromised partner. This technique, dubbed indirect ransomware, provides two major tactical advantages to attackers. First, it bypasses banks' reinforced perimeter defenses. Rather than sending a phishing email likely to be filtered, criminals compromise a service provider with legitimate access to the banking network, human resources management firm, business software editor with remote support rights, or infrastructure provider. Once this third party is infected, attackers use the trusted connection to infiltrate without triggering alerts. Second, this method allows prolonged latency. Hackers can remain dormant in the system for weeks, analyzing the environment and preparing their malicious payload. When the ransomware finally activates, the victim discovers not only data encryption but also the extent of prior infiltration. This approach adds a psychological dimension to extortion. The implicit message transmitted to the victim is that their vulnerability is not limited to a one-time incident, but reveals a systemic flaw in their partner ecosystem. This additional pressure can influence the decision to pay ransom, despite contrary recommendations from authorities. DORA, facing operational reality. The European Union implemented in 2025 the DORA regulation, Digital Operational Resilience Act, precisely to address these systemic risks related to third-party suppliers. This regulatory framework requires banks and insurers to identify their critical service providers, regularly assess their security, and establish continuity plans in case of these suppliers' failure. The regulator can designate certain suppliers of critical importance, particularly major cloud actors serving numerous financial institutions, and subject them to audits and resilience tests piloted at the European level. The stated ambition aims to reduce collective exposure to a chain incident. However, regulatory compliance does not constitute operational immunity. The accumulation of legal obligations does not mechanically protect against incidents. The SolarWinds or MOVEit compromises affected numerous organizations certified according to various security standards. DORA encourages action and structures risk governance, but the operational challenge remains for CISOs to concretely master their dependencies. Visibility on sometimes opaque environments, sustained investments, close collaboration with suppliers of varying maturities. The geopolitical dimension of the threat. Parallel to profit-motivated cybercriminals, the financial sector must deal with geopolitical actors with different objectives: political influence, intelligence collection, symbolic destabilization. France, due to its international commitment and particularly its support for Ukraine, found itself directly targeted. Pro-Russian hacktivist groups like No Name 05716, Killnet, or Anonymous Russia have conducted distributed denial of service (DDoS) campaigns since 2022 against countries they perceive as hostile to Moscow. These collectives, organized via Telegram and often tacitly encouraged by the Kremlin, seek less financial gain than media visibility and symbolic disruption. The attack against La Poste Française in December 2025 illustrates this logic. Starting December 19th, just before the year-end holidays, No Name 05716 launched a massive DDoS saturating La Poste and La Banque Postale infrastructures. Parcel tracking services, online banking account access, and various business applications suffered severe slowdowns or interruptions for several days, potentially affecting millions of users. La Poste mobilized its teams and partners to filter malicious traffic, restoring most services by December 22nd. The Paris prosecutor's office opened an investigation quickly taken over by the DGSI given the potentially political dimension. No Name 05716 explicitly framed its action within the context of French support for Ukraine. Direct operational impact remained limited, no data theft, no permanent damage, but the symbolic scope was sought, demonstrating that no infrastructure, even heavily used by the public, escapes their nuisance capacity. Important note: La Poste confirmed a distributed denial of service attack having disrupted several of its online services starting December 22nd, 2025. At this stage, attribution remains unconfirmed. One source reports that the No Name 05716 group allegedly claimed the operation via a message published on a Telegram channel, But this element must be considered declarative and does not constitute proof of attribution. In the absence of official confirmation or public technical indicators, this claim should not be taken at face value. ENISA data for 2024 to 2025 confirms that these hacktivist groups concentrated 69% of their attacks against the European banking subsector, particularly targeting Italy, Spain, and France. These campaigns often synchronize with geopolitical events, NATO summits, parliamentary votes on Ukraine aid, economic sanctions decisions. The objective remains primarily media disruption rather than lasting financial damage, but these repeated assaults oblige banks to strengthen their resilience capacities and continuity plans. State-aligned APTs, espionage and fund theft. Beyond noisy hacktivism, state-linked APT, advanced persistent threat. Groups conduct more discreet operations against the financial sector. Their motivations vary by actor. North Korea probably represents the most tangible state threat to European banks. The Pyongyang regime, under strict international sanctions, finances its nuclear and ballistic program via criminal activities of which bank hacking has become a central pillar. The Lazarus Group and its affiliates like APT-38 have to their credit the theft of $81 million from the Bangladesh Central Bank in 2016 via SWIFT network manipulations, similar attacks in Vietnam and Ecuador, and since 2018 a series of cryptocurrency exchange platform compromises totaling over $1 billion. ENISA confirms that Lazarus probably remains the primary APT threat to European Union financial institutions. This group operates with remarkable patience, sometimes sleeping for months in a system before taking action. Major French banks, through their international presence and connectivity to USD payment circuits or Asian interbank systems, constitute potential targets. Any indirect connection to less secure banks can serve as a springboard, Lazarus having demonstrated its capacity to bounce from one financial institution to another via interbank networks. Russia and China primarily pursue espionage objectives. The Russian group APT-28, Fancy Bear, targeted French ministries and companies in 2023 to 2024, according to French authorities. Concerning the financial sector specifically, interest could focus on Western sanctions, effectiveness, or preparation of potential economic reprisals. The Sandworm Group, also Russian, demonstrated significant sabotage capabilities in Ukraine with the NotPetya malware. An attack of this nature against critical financial infrastructures like the SWIFT network or stock exchange systems would have major consequences. Although no such incident has been confirmed to date in Western Europe, Chinese groups, according to ENISA, were involved in 2 incidents targeting European finance during the recent period. Public details remain limited, but the privileged hypothesis concerns economic intelligence collection, market movement anticipation, or access to data on strategic clients. China has also demonstrated interest in cryptocurrency platforms, several Asian exchange compromises being attributed to them. Projected trends for 2026. Current signals allow identifying several probable evolutions for the coming year. Supply chain risk will persist and probably intensify. Attackers, emboldened by their 2024 to 2025 successes, will systematize this approach. Threat scenarios include compromise of a major cloud provider or widely deployed banking software package, with cascading effects on numerous establishments simultaneously. Protection of third and fourth parties will remain a critical issue. Attack sophistication will increase via artificial intelligence. The year 2025 saw the emergence of malware exploiting AI, and this trend will amplify. The appearance of adaptive generative malware is anticipated. Malicious software capable of modifying its behavior in real time according to the detected environment. The same malware could analyze whether it is in a bank's network, an insurer's, or a supplier's, and adapt its malicious payload accordingly. Phishing campaigns will integrate hyper-realistic deepfakes, faked executive voices, manipulated videos, making social engineering more credible than ever. Financial crime will continue its professionalization. Division of labor between criminal groups will intensify. Initial access brokers specializing in financial service provider infiltration, then reselling these accesses on the dark web to ransomware operators or hostile states. This criminal marketplace lowers the technical entry barrier, allowing actors with financial means but without advanced skills to acquire access to high-value targets. Emerging financial technologies will expand the attack surface. Growing adoption of NFC contactless payments, financial super apps, and open banking via APIs will create new vectors. Attacks against contactless transactions will increase. Exfiltration via rogue terminals in proximity, mobile malware intercepting NFC communications, open APIs between banks and fintechs will be intensively tested for injection flaws or weak authentication. Finance crypto hybridization will lead to combined attacks exploiting smart contract vulnerabilities or institutional wallets. The boundary between hacktivism and cybercrime could blur. Groups presenting as hacktivists could integrate lucrative actions to finance their operations, while criminals could adopt ideological discourse to complicate attribution. This convergence will complicate crisis management, victims not always knowing how to distinguish between pure extortion and politically motivated sabotage. Priority defense axes. Faced with this polymorphic and persistent threat, several lines of action are imperative. Rigorous third-party risk management constitutes the immediate priority. This implies exhaustive mapping of critical suppliers, regular audits of their security posture, integration of strict contractual clauses, and continuous monitoring of vulnerabilities at service providers. Compartmentalization mechanisms must evolve so that a compromise at a supplier no longer automatically leads to sensitive data exposure. End-to-end encryption, zero-trust architecture, strict network segmentation. Proactive surveillance via threat hunting must become systematic. No system being infallible, the capacity to detect abnormal behavior early, then rapidly contain the incident becomes determinant. This requires SOC teams trained in emerging tactics, widely deployed EDR/XDR tools, and fluid internal communication allowing top management involvement from the first hours of an alert. Incident response plans must integrate crisis scenarios including prolonged unavailability of a partner or simultaneous attack on multiple sector entities. Point. Regular exercises, ideally multi-stakeholder. Allow testing these procedures and identifying gaps before a real crisis reveals them. Continuous awareness of internal teams and partners regarding new attack techniques remains essential. Voice deepfakes, targeted phishing via instant messaging, artificial intelligence augmented CEO fraud. These vectors require informed human vigilance that only adapted training can provide. Investment in threat intelligence allows anticipating attacks rather than suffering them, monitoring emerging modus operandi, subscribing to technical indicator feeds, participating in sectoral exchange communities like FS-ISAC or CERTFR, provide the contextual knowledge necessary for proactive defense. The necessity of collective response. The cyber threat in the financial sector now exceeds the framework of corporate IT security to become a systemic stability issue. The risk that a major supply chain attack triggers a cascade of disruptions across the European banking system is no longer hypothetical but probable. This reality imposes a coordinated response at sectoral and national levels. Information sharing mechanisms via CERTS, sectoral centers like FS-ISAC, and national agencies like ENISA must be fully exploited. Rapid notification of incidents to authorities and sector peers, even in anonymized form, can prevent attack propagation to other institutions. Interbank exercises and working groups led by ACPR, ANSSI, or ENISA at the European level strengthen collective posture. These initiatives allow testing resilience against extreme scenarios, coordinated multi-bank attack, major cloud provider outage, simultaneous compromise of multiple critical service providers. Public-private collaboration also proves crucial against geopolitical threats. DDoS botnet dismantling, formal attack attribution to state groups, sanctions application against sponsors. These actions require coordination between victim companies, law enforcement, and intelligence services. The financial sector has historically demonstrated its resilience capacity against crises. The cyber crisis constitutes a new form, insidious because invisible until the moment of compromise, but surmountable through anticipation, preparation, and cooperation. The digital trust indispensable to banking system functioning now rests on the collective capacity to transform the financial digital ecosystem into a hostile environment for attackers, where each malicious attempt confronts multiple layers of detection and response. The year 2026 will test this resilience. Institutions that will have invested in mastering their digital supply chain, developed their early detection capabilities, and actively participated in sectoral cooperation mechanisms will be better positioned to navigate this complex threat landscape. Those still considering cybersecurity as a compliance constraint rather than an operational resilience imperative, risk painfully discovering the gap between regulatory compliance and effective protection. And that's it. This edition ends here. I hope it provided you with clear, accurate, and useful information. Until then, we don't think, we patch. If you are a new listener, feel free to subscribe to the RadioCSIRT podcast. RadioCSIRT is available in English, Italian, Spanish, and French. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, YouTube, Deezer, and Spotify. All open source intelligence links used in this episode are available on RadioCSIRT.com. See you tomorrow for a new episode. Take care. Goodbye.